David Hartford had always been a man of success. At 55, he was wealthy, powerful, and well-respected. His real estate empire had grown steadily over the years, making him one of the wealthiest men in the city. But despite his achievements, David had grown restless. His marriage to Evelyn, his wife of over 30 years, felt stale. Though she had always been loyal, he found himself longing for something new, something exciting. And that's when he met Isabella. She was everything Evelyn wasn't: young, vibrant, full of life. The thrill of her attention made David feel alive in a way he hadn't in years. Against the advice of his friends, his business partners, and even his children, David made the decision to leave Evelyn and marry Isabella. The divorce was swift, and the marriage to his new wife followed not long after. David didn't look back, thinking he had found the key to his happiness. David's new life was like a dream at first. Lavish parties, exotic vacations, and the feeling of youthful excitement filled his days. Isabella was stunning, and wherever they went, people couldn't help but stare. David felt like the luckiest man alive. "Isn't this life perfect?" Isabella would say, resting her head on David's shoulder as they lounged in their beachside mansion. "You and me, no worries, just living the good life." David smiled, gazing at her. "It's everything I ever wanted," he replied. But even as he said the words, he couldn't shake a strange unease creeping into his heart. As the months went by, David started noticing subtle changes. Isabella's attentions, which once felt genuine, seemed rehearsed. She spent more time away from home, and her excuses for late nights became vague. The conversations they once had turned shallow. One night, David found himself sitting alone in their opulent living room, sipping a glass of whiskey. Isabella had said she was meeting friends, but something didn't feel right. His phone buzzed, and a text from his friend Paul popped up. "You still enjoying the new life?" Paul asked. David stared at the screen for a moment. "Am I?" he thought, feeling a pang of uncertainty. But the truth hit him the next evening, when he overheard Isabella talking on the phone in the hallway. "No, Alex," she whispered, her voice urgent. "I can't stand being with him anymore. The old man just doesn't get it. Soon it'll all be ours, and we won't have to wait much longer. You know the plan." David felt his blood run cold. His hand gripped the doorframe tightly as he realized what she was saying. His young wife had been seeing someone else, someone younger, a man named Alex. And worse, they were plotting to kill him. David didn't confront her right away. Instead, he retreated to his study, heart pounding, trying to make sense of what he had just learned. His life, the life he had traded for fleeting excitement, was a lie. The next few days were a blur of planning and paranoia. He kept his distance from Isabella, pretending everything was fine while carefully gathering evidence. He hired a private investigator to follow her, and it didn't take long before he had all the proof he needed: photos of her with Alex, text messages about their scheme, and even an overheard conversation about how they planned to poison his drink during their next romantic getaway. David felt sick. How could he have been so blind? He had thrown away his family, his life with Evelyn, for this? The thought of being so easily betrayed filled him with anger. But instead of confronting Isabella immediately, David decided to play the long game. David visited his lawyer the next morning. I need to rewrite my will, he said, keeping his voice calm, though inside he was seething. His lawyer, Greg, raised an eyebrow. Everything okay, David? Just some updates, David replied, sliding a folder of documents across the table. Let's make sure Isabella doesn't get a penny if something happens to me. Greg nodded, though he seemed concerned. You sure about this? David looked him straight in the eye. I've never been more sure of anything. Over the next few weeks, David carefully set his plan in motion. He pretended not to notice the growing distance between him and Isabella, allowed her to believe her plan was still a secret. But behind the scenes, he installed surveillance cameras in their home, gathering video and audio evidence of her plotting with Alex. Then, he orchestrated the perfect trap. I've been thinking, David said one evening over dinner, keeping his voice light and casual. We haven't had much time for just the two of us. How about a weekend at the beach house? Just you and me. Isabella's eyes lit up, though David knew it wasn't because of any desire to spend time with him. She saw the opportunity, and he could almost see her calculating in her mind. That sounds perfect, she purred, leaning in to kiss him. David smiled, hiding his revulsion. I'll make all the arrangements. Over the next few days, David played the role of the unsuspecting husband to perfection. He packed for their trip, made reservations, and even arranged for his private jet to take them there. Isabella, meanwhile, was busy preparing her own arrangements. She believed that this weekend would be the end of David's life and the beginning of her and Alex's new, wealthy future. The night they arrived at the beach house, David watched as Isabella poured wine for both of them. She smiled sweetly as she handed him the glass, the same smile that had once enchanted him. To us, she said, raising her glass. David lifted his, swirling the wine, knowing full well it was poisoned. He didn't drink, just stared at the liquid, feeling the weight of everything that had brought him to this moment. Before he could lower the glass, the front door burst open. Police officers swarmed into the room, their guns drawn. Isabella dropped her glass in shock, stumbling backward. What's going on? She gasped. David stood, looking down at her with cold satisfaction. You really thought I wouldn't figure it out? He said softly. I know everything, Isabella. The affair, the plan to kill me, all of it. You and Alex are going to prison. Isabella's face went pale as she realized the trap had closed around her. You can't do this to me, she shrieked, backing away as the police cuffed her. But David didn't listen to the rest. He turned his back on her, walking toward the door, finally feeling free from the nightmare he had created for himself. After Isabella's arrest, David felt a strange emptiness. His wealth, his business, none of it seemed to matter anymore. He had lost something far more valuable when he left Evelyn, and now, standing in his old home, he realized what a fool he had been. He knocked on the door, his heart pounding with nervous anticipation. When Evelyn opened it, she looked at him with a mixture of surprise and caution. David, she said, her voice neutral. Evelyn, I've made so many mistakes, he began, his voice raw. I was a fool to leave you. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm here to ask for it anyway. Evelyn studied him for a long moment. I heard what happened, she said quietly. with Isabella. The news has been everywhere. David sighed, feeling the weight of his actions. I wish I could undo everything. But all I can do now is ask if we can start over. For the sake of our family. For the grandkids. Evelyn looked away for a moment, her expression softening at the mention of their grandchildren. David, you broke my heart, she said finally. But I won't let our family be broken forever. If you're willing to make things right, we can try. But it will take time. David nodded, tears stinging his eyes. I'm ready. In the month that followed, David worked tirelessly to rebuild the relationships he had nearly destroyed. He spent more time with Evelyn, helping her with their grandchildren and making up for lost time. The scars of his betrayal didn't fade quickly, but over time, a new understanding formed between them. David knew that his past mistakes would always be a part of his story, but with Evelyn by his side once more, he finally felt that he had a second chance at happiness, one built on love, not deceit. As for Isabella and Alex, they were both sentenced to long prison terms for conspiracy to commit murder. The fortune they had sought would never be theirs, and David felt no remorse in knowing that justice had been served. In the end, David learned that true wealth wasn't in his bank accounts or the properties he owned. It was in the family that had stood by him, even when he didn't deserve it. And that was something no amount of money could ever buy.